You are standing in a German repair shop just outside Stuttgart, the smell of cold metal and engine oil in the air, and you ask the master mechanic one simple question: which car would you never own yourself? He wipes his hands, looks at the row of cars on his lifts, and points at 3 of them without hesitation. Those, he says, I would not drive those if you gave them to me for free. That single moment changed how I look at every car on the road, because here is the truth I learned the hard way. The most expensive, most admired, most heavily advertised cars are very often the ones the people who repair them for a living quietly refuse to own. And Germany, the country that builds some of the finest machines on earth, is also the country with the sharpest eye for which cars are rotten underneath the paint. By the end of this, you will know the 17 cars German mechanics step away from and the 5 they trust with their own families. And I am going to show you a buried German inspection report published every single year since 1972 that tells you the real defect rate of almost any used car before you spend $1. This works whether you drive a 20-year-old sedan or you are shopping this weekend. I spent 3 winters living near Ludwigsburg, and I still remember my neighbor Klaus laughing at the shiny SUV I was so proud of, telling me I had bought a repair bill with wheels. I did not believe him then, I believe him now. Let me tell you why a German mechanic sees a car so differently than you and I do. In Germany, no car hides its sins for long. Every car over 3 years old must pass an inspection called the TÜV, and then again every 2 years after that, for as long as it lives. The Technischer Überwachungsverein has been poking, measuring, and judging cars since the 1800s, and the modern vehicle inspection became mandatory long before most countries took safety seriously. So a German mechanic does not guess whether a car is good. He watches the same models roll through his bay year after year, and he sees exactly which ones fall apart on schedule. That is the key word, schedule. Because what looks like bad luck to you and me looks like a pattern to him. He sees the same water pump fail at the same mileage. He sees the same electronics die in the same winter. He sees the same expensive engine swallow itself right after the warranty ends. And that pattern is the thing the glossy commercials will never show you. The mechanic is not impressed by a badge or a leather seat. He is counting how many times he has had to save someone from the same car. But here is where it gets uncomfortable. Because some of the cars on his refuse to drive list are cars you have been taught your whole life to admire. Let me start with the luxury trap, because this is where the most money disappears. The first car nearly every German mechanic I ever spoke to refuses to own is the full-size British luxury off-roader, the big Range Rover. On the outside it is a rolling palace. Underneath it is a nightmare of air suspension that sags overnight, electronics that argue with each other, and repair bills that can pass $10,000 in a single visit. German breakdown data collected by the National Auto Club, the ADAC, has for years shown certain luxury off-roaders stranded on the roadside far more often than humble little runabouts, costing 1/5 the price. Second on the list is the small British luxury hatchback that everyone finds so charming, the modern Mini. Cute, yes, but mechanics see the timing chain stretch early, the water pump weep, and the turbo complain, often before the car is even 7 years old. Third, and this one hurts people, is a whole run of older Land Rover models. A mechanic in Bremen told me he keeps a photo of one on his wall as a warning. Beautiful to look at, leaking from places he did not know a car could leak from. Therefore, you can already see the pattern forming. The more a car promises you prestige, the more the man who fixes it seems to back away. But prestige is only the first trap. The next one is far more common, and it might be sitting in your driveway right now. Let me talk about the cars built to feel modern and clever, because clever is exactly what breaks. Number 4 is a certain generation of the dual-clutch automatic gearboxes that a number of European makers pushed hard in the 2000s. The German engineers call this kind of gearbox brilliant when it works. The mechanics call it a time bomb when the clutch pack and the control unit start to fail, because the repair can cost more than the car is worth. Number 5 is a family of small turbocharged engines that were shrunk down to save fuel on paper. On paper, they sip fuel. In the real world, the mechanic sees them burning oil, overheating, and cracking, because a tiny engine forced to haul a heavy car is an engine living in pain every single day. Number 6 is the compact French hatchback with the fragile electrical brain. Lovely to sit in. But a mechanic near Cologne told me he has chased phantom electrical faults on these for entire afternoons, faults that appear, vanish, and cost the owner a fortune in guesswork. Number 7 is the Italian compact known for its style, the little Fiat that steals hearts and empties wallets, charming in the showroom, rattling and rusting far too soon in the real world. Number 8 is the sporty Italian sedan with the racing badge, the Alfa Romeo of certain years, a car that mechanics genuinely love to drive and genuinely refuse to own, because the joy lasts a weekend and the repairs last for years. And here is the moment I promised you would come, because none of this is an accident. For most of the last century, cars were built to be repaired. My neighbor Klaus still drove a 1980s sedan with over 400,000 kilometers on it, and he fixed it himself in his garage on Sundays. But somewhere in the last 30 years, the people who design cars learned a colder lesson. A car that lasts forever is a car you only buy once. A car that fails on a schedule just after the warranty ends is a car that keeps the whole machine of dealerships, parts, and financing fed for decades. The German engineers have a bitter little phrase for parts designed to die right on time, and once a mechanic learns to see it, he sees it everywhere. The plastic cooling part placed right next to the hottest spot in the engine. The sealed gearbox marked as lifetime, when lifetime quietly means the life of the warranty and not one day more. The electronic module glued into a place where replacing it means tearing out half the dashboard. This is the villain hiding under the paint. Not one company. A whole way of thinking that decided your dependence was more profitable than your trust. But therefore the mechanic becomes the last honest witness. He has no reason to lie to you. He is not selling you the car. He is the one who has to look you in the eye when the bill arrives. And that is exactly why his refuse to drive list is worth more than any advertisement ever made. Let me keep going, because the list gets more surprising from here. Number 9 is a run of American pickup and SUV models that were never truly built for the long, cold, salted winters where the frames rust and the transmissions slur. Number 10 is the budget Korean sedan from the early years, before those makers dramatically improved, a car mechanics remember for engines that simply gave up. Number 11 is a certain German luxury sedan from a troubled era, loaded with early electronics that were far too ambitious for the technology of the day, a car that could lock its own owner out and refuse to start for no reason a computer could explain. Number 12 is the two-seat city car, marketed as the future of clever urban driving, the Smart, which mechanics found anything but smart when its little gearbox jerked and its repairs cost as much as a far larger car. Number 13 is a family of diesel models caught up in the great emissions scandal, cars whose value collapsed and whose after-fix reliability left mechanics shaking their heads. Number 14 is the low-cost SUV built to a price so tight that the mechanic can feel the corners that were cut the moment he opens the hood. But let me stop the list right here, because I know exactly what some of you are thinking. You are thinking this is fine for a man who lives near a German garage, or for someone shopping for a brand new car with money to burn. You are thinking none of this helps you, sitting there with the car you already own, the one you cannot simply replace. So this next part is built for you, specifically, and it costs you nothing but 10 minutes and your own 2 hands. Here is the first thing a German master mechanic taught me to do, and you can do it in your own driveway this afternoon. Pull the engine oil dipstick out, wipe it clean, put it back and pull it again. Then look, but more importantly, smell. Oil should smell like oil. If it smells sharp and burnt, like something scorched, the engine has been running too hot, and that is the single loudest warning of trouble to come. Then rub a drop between your fingers. If it feels gritty, there is metal in it, and metal in your oil is the engine slowly eating itself. Next, the coolant. When the engine is stone cold, and only when it is cold, open the coolant reservoir and look at the color. Clean coolant is bright and clear. If you see a brown, oily, milky sludge, that is the mixing of oil and water, and in the German shops that sludge has a grim nickname because it means the head gasket is failing, one of the most expensive repairs there is. Now walk to the back of the car and look at the tailpipe when someone starts it. A little water vapor on a cold morning is normal and healthy, but thick blue smoke means burning oil. Thick white smoke that keeps coming means coolant is leaking into the engine. Black smoke means it is running badly rich. A mechanic can read a car from 20 feet away just by what comes out the back, and now so can you. And the last free trick, park on a clean patch of dry pavement overnight, then in the morning look at the ground under the car. A healthy car leaves the ground clean, fresh drops tell you the story. Clear and oily near the front is engine oil. Reddish and slick is transmission or power steering fluid. A sweet-smelling green or orange puddle is coolant. None of this needs a single tool. It needs only your eyes, your nose, and the patience to look before you trust. Do this on the car in your driveway tonight, and you will already know more about its true health than most owners learn in a decade. And that is exactly the point I want to press on for a moment, because those 4 checks are only the first 4 things Klaus ever showed me, and I have spent years writing down the rest. Everything I could not fit into one video I put into my books. The cold start rules that protect your engine every single morning. How to coast and use engine braking so you stop burning fuel you already paid for. The tire pressure numbers that quietly decide your mileage. The oil and fluid strategy that adds decades. And the failure mode intelligence that lets you hear a problem before it becomes a bill. It is nearly 400 pages of the protocols themselves, written for a man with no tools, no imported parts, and no money for a new car, working on his own driveway. If you want the complete system instead of the sample, scan the QR code right there on your screen, or use the link in the description or the pinned comment for the books. Then come straight back here, because I am not done with you yet. But knowing the health of your own car is only half the battle, because therefore the real question becomes, how do you know which cars are worth trusting in the first place before you ever hand over $1? Let me finish the list of the ones mechanics run from, and then I will give you the 5 they actually trust. Number 15 is the ultra-luxury flagship sedan, loaded with every gadget imaginable, the kind of car that costs more than a house when new and now sells for the price of a used compact, precisely because everyone knows the repair bills will bury you. Number 16 is a beloved German hot hatch from a specific troubled generation, whose famous gearbox and thirsty little engine turned a driving dream into a mechanic's steady paycheck. And number 17, the one that surprises people the most, is the plug-in luxury hybrid built in a rush, where the mechanic now has to deal with a complicated gasoline engine, a complicated electric system, and a battery pack whose replacement cost can equal the entire value of the car. 17 cars, and if you trace the thread through all of them, it is always the same. Complexity sold as luxury, fragility sold as innovation. A promise on the showroom floor that the mechanic has to clean up years later. So now let me give you what you actually came for. The 5 cars German mechanics trust enough to park in their own driveways and hand to their own children. The first one will not surprise you, but the reason might. It is the Japanese workhorse sedan and its family, the Toyota built on the boring, proven, unglamorous engine. German mechanics, who have every reason to be proud and prefer their home brands, will quietly admit that these cars simply refuse to break. The German breakdown statistics from the ADAC have for years placed certain Toyota and its luxury cousin Lexus models near the very top for the fewest roadside failures, not because they are exciting, because the engineers refused to add fragile cleverness they did not need. The second trusted car is a specific older Mercedes, the classic W124 sedan from the late 1980s and early 1990s. Ask an old German mechanic what a car should be, and his eyes go soft. This was built in an era when Mercedes engineers were told to make a car that could run 1,000,000 kilometers, and many of them did, and still do, as taxis across 3 continents. The doors close like a bank vault. The engine is simple enough to understand. It was built before the cold lesson took over. The third trusted car surprises everyone. It is the Porsche, specifically the well-kept modern 911 and Boxster models. People assume a sports car must be a money pit, but the German breakdown data has repeatedly shown these among the most reliable cars on the road, because the people who buy them care for them, and because the engineering, for all its ambition, is done properly rather than cheaply. The fourth trusted car is the humble Mazda, the Japanese brand that quietly resisted the tiny turbo fashion and kept building simple, honest engines when everyone else was chasing paper fuel numbers. Mechanics respect a company that refused to follow the crowd into fragility. And the fifth trusted car is a specific generation of the Volkswagen Golf, the one built with the older, simpler, proven engine before the complicated fashions crept in. A German mechanic will tell you that when Volkswagen keeps it simple, they build one of the finest everyday cars on earth. The trick is knowing which years kept it simple, and that is exactly what the secret I promised you reveals. Because here is the thing. Everything I have told you so far is what mechanics know from experience. But experience takes decades to earn, and you do not have decades. You have this weekend, maybe, to make a decision about a car. So how do you get the mechanic's decades of pattern reading without spending decades in a repair bay? This is the buried document I promised you at the very start. Every year since 1972, Germany has published something called the TÜV report. It grew out of that same mandatory inspection system, the one every car must pass to stay on the road. And because millions upon millions of cars are inspected every single year, the people who run those inspections do something quietly powerful. They record the exact defect rate of every model sorted by age, and they publish it. Think about what that means. This is not a magazine writer guessing. This is not a company advertising its own product. This is millions of real cars, of every make, measured on a lift by an independent inspector, and then sorted into a ranking of which models showed serious defects and which came through clean. They call the number the Mengel quote, the defect rate. A low defect rate means that model, at that age, tends to arrive at inspection with nothing seriously wrong. A high defect rate means that model is quietly falling apart on a schedule exactly like the mechanic warned. For over 50 years, this report has told the plain truth about which cars last, and most people outside Germany have never once heard of it. Here is how you use it this weekend, and it is beautifully simple. Before you buy any used car, look up that exact model and that exact age in the TÜV report ranking. The report groups cars by how many years old they are, because a defect rate only means something when you compare a car to others of the same age. If the model you are looking at sits near the bottom of the list with a high defect rate, you walk away, no matter how good the paint looks or how sweet the salesman sounds. If it sits near the top with a low defect rate, you have just confirmed with the data of millions of cars what would otherwise take a mechanic 30 years to learn. And now the picture is complete. The knowledge existed all along. It was measured honestly year after year by a system that answers to no advertiser. It was pushed aside everywhere outside Germany, drowned out by glossy commercials and celebrity endorsements, and the endless noise telling you that new and complicated means better. But a whole nation of inspectors and mechanics kept the real record alive, one honest measurement at a time, and now you hold it too. The next time you stand in front of a car, whether it is the one in your driveway or one you are thinking of buying, you no longer have to trust the badge, the salesman, or the shine. You can read the car with your own eyes, smell the oil, check the ground beneath it, and then check its true defect record against 50 years of German honesty. That is the whole secret, not a trick, a way of seeing that they hoped you would never learn. So here is what I want you to take away. The thing I wish my neighbor Klaus had shouted at me before I wasted my money on that shiny SUV. The most trustworthy voice about a car is never the one trying to sell it to you. It is the quiet man who has to fix it, and the honest report that counts every failure without flinching. That knowledge was taken from us on purpose, buried under advertising, and today you took a piece of it back. If you are the kind of person who has always suspected that the truth about what lasts was hidden to protect someone else's profit, then you already think like the mechanics I learned from. You belong with the people who would rather know than be sold to. Now I want to hear from you. Of the 5 cars the mechanics trust, which one surprised you the most? The old Mercedes W124 or the Porsche that everyone assumes is a money pit? Tell me in the comments right now. And tell me where in the world you are watching from, because I read them and I love seeing how far this reaches. And if you know someone about to buy a used car, send this to them today, before they sign anything, because this could save them thousands. If you believe practical knowledge like this should never have been buried in the first place, subscribe and stand with the people quietly recovering it, one forgotten method at a time. Because next time, I am going to show you the single maintenance habit German drivers do every autumn that lets their cars survive 20 brutal winters, while ours rust out in 10. You have never heard of it, and once you do, you will never skip it again. Before you go, one last thing. If you want the full car list with the trusted ones, that waits inside the Old Ways circle. In there you can ask me your own question, and a real person, me, answers you myself. You'd be among thousands of practical folks just like you. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen, and you can cancel any time. No risk at all. Now that you know which cars to avoid, let me show you how to make yours last. These 17 simple German habits took my car past 700,000 miles. That video's starting right here.